you
So
don't just get this all at once. It comes to you because if you try to get it all at once, you'd be so plastered by information of a different
mm,
kind, not technology.
right.
Uh, I don't think you could handle it, or not
Yeah.
you specifically. But does it make people look at you differently? I say yes. People people you know how people are. People are afraid of things they don't know. America is I think is a perfect example of when we don't understand anything, we show up with pitchforks and torches. We're ready to burn it down because, first of all, what we already know is right and perfect anyway. I don't need to know anything else.
Uh-huh.
And behind that is the fear of getting to know what this really is.
Mm,
I think fear is perhaps the greatest enemy that we face. And fear, it usually, in my experience, is the boogeyman we create to focus on, so we don't actually have to focus on what's real.
yes. So I like, like what I mentioned earlier. So certain people that I was more close or friends with, and then when I start kind of mention about this journey, then they will start looking at me differently. It kind of not feel like if there's the connection is start falling in a distant, apart. Yeah, and
But I think
so
more realistically, Shelby, is the it's not falling apart so much as it is uh, trying to figure out what happened. Somebody changed, you didn't change together.
yes,
So there's an imbalance. And an enlightened person it's difficult to match a person who is enlightened with somebody who isn't, because you're not understanding. I mean, the person who is enlightened has, in my opinion,
yeah,
a completely new view on things, and at least they should have. Or, how big was your spiritual awakening? And
mm,
oftentimes it can be small steps until you reach a fuller understanding. Some
right,
people get what I call the lightning bolt.
mm,
It's like one day you're fat, dumb, and happy, and about just go, life's really cool, and then all of a sudden awareness creates uh, a couple of different things.
yes,
Um, while you're becoming aware, you're trying to figure out, what did I know before, and why is it all different now? And I began to search, and
yeah,
the search was enormous, and
mm-hmm,
yet the resolution of that search, the finality of it was small. It has this weird case of being inversely proportionate. It's like, well, I believe a little bit, but it's this gigantic thing, and then it's when you try to grasp the gigantic thing, you realize you can only deal with one small bite.
yeah.
You're
Too
dealing
much
with,
information
yeah,
sometimes.
you're dealing with what I call these conflicts all the time. You know,
Yeah, and also kind of make I don't know about you, but personally, it kind of make me shift my how I see things, shift my purpose, shift my the way I feel fulfilled. Like certain things I might feel it's attractive to me or important to me before, and now it doesn't seem as important as before, and
well,
I kind of shift to a different, I would say, perspective or certain different meaning to it, purpose in
well,
life.
certainly it would have to be in order for it to be genuine. I think
Yeah.
it until you can until I can organize my thinking and my feeling and all the things that go along with a spiritual awakening.
Mhm.
I was as lost as being in a boat in a storm and
Right.
having no rudder. I was just being tossed around all the time, and that's why it's necessary after having a spiritual awakening that you find a teacher, a guide who can help you, because otherwise you're going to rely on the old knowledge that you have, because that's all you have. I mean, you can't do anything else.
Right.
And while your heart and your mind know it wants to seek a different path,
Mm.
it can't until you connect with someone or something that can grab you by the hand, so to speak, and take you down a new road.
Hmm.
And the new road isn't always paved. Most times it's not. And sometimes you have to go down a road a certain ways to realize that this is not the road that you really want to be on.
Hmm. Yes, and talk about that mentor figure. You also share with me this guy named Joseph Campbell.
Joseph Campbell, what a wonderful man.
Can
He's,
you? Because I never heard of him before. 'Cause I guess it's more, different generation.
Joseph Campbell is a writer, philosopher, uh, and he studies mythologies.
Hmm.
You know, all cultures in the world have their mythology.
Right.
Well, most of them do. You know, uh, and
Right.
people lived their mythologies.
Uh-huh.
A tribe of people living in the southern region of where the heck ever, they follow a set of beliefs,
Hmm.
and it's based on, let's say it, for lack of a better term, like religion. Religion gives people a basis. It has aside from all the rules and stuff, but it also has a guide map for a morality.
Yeah. When you mention this, it reminds me of indulgence people, Indian,
Uh,
right?
it-
Indians, indulgence people.
yes,
They have more, some sort of more
you mean
spiritual awareness.
indigenous peoples?
Yes,
Yeah.
they have more spiritual awareness than other, like you say, other group of people.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what define. In fact, there a tribe's
Right.
mythology often uh, 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 describe who they are. You
Mm,
know, and that's like people who are a Catholic or somebody who is a Christian or somebody
mhm.
who's an atheist. You identify with something,
Right.
and you identify with something because other people believe that way, and you feel supported.
Hmm.
Because actually, in my experience, spirituality can be a very lonely place,
Yes.
because it sets you apart from a lot of the rest of society.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. I feel it right now.
yeah.
People will think I'm an imposter or something.
Well,
Right? Have you ever experienced that?
well, I don't listen to them.
No, no, but yeah, of course you
But
don't
yeah,
listen to
oh
them,
yeah,
but they
I've
will
had
just
people call me a lot of things, uh,
right.
but I found people more interested about that than not. And to give you an example on the flip
Mhm.
side of this stuff, uh, this happens to me a lot.
Mhm.
Like last night, I was in the market,
Okay.
and in the market, I don't know how it happened, but
Okay.
started getting involved in a conversation with this other woman,
Oh, okay.
and we just started talking, and the conversation starts to shift into the things that we're talking about now, into
Oh, interesting.
spirituality.
Okay.
And I find for me that happens a lot. And I
Okay.
think, I think the universe brings people together, so it to reinforce that your beliefs are not out there. This is real stuff. It's happening, and it's happening in real time, and it's really, there's such an explosion in the heart when you start talking to somebody, you realize that this person is connected spiritually.
Is that kind of like a law of attraction? You attract the people, in the
Yeah.
same vibration or frequency that you call
Yes.
it? Yeah.
And people are drawn together or brought together for different reasons,
Yes.
you know.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's for a very short period, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's a very long period of people joining together. You know,
And then sometimes people take a break and reconnect. Right? That too, right?
when they're being egotistical and selfish. I don't know anybody like
Yeah, I know.
you know That's the other thing. We talk about ego. The I am part of
Right.
ego is the real you. And then there's the Freudian, super ego, uh, believing things about ourselves, which isn't, it's not true. Um,
Mhm.
and fortunately, a lot of people can laugh at things. You look at that and you just end up laughing because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I experienced that myself too. They were thinking uh, I'm totally nuts or crazy when they're not, when you not connect with certain people. But certain people, like when you mentioned to me out of the blue, universe has a message for you. Normally, people might freak out or say, "What are you talking about?" But when you said that, I kind of like, oh, I understand because I've been already starting that little journey, beginning my journey. So when you mentioned that, to me, it makes sense to me. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, and a lot of times, you people come together,
Hmm.
and for whatever reason, they may walk away from each other as well,
Hmm.
but they come back together again, which means that the universe wants to, in my opinion, the universe wants these people connected,
Mm.
you know,
Okay.
and um, in spite of ourselves, the universe is going to do what it does, you know,
Yeah.
and it's amazing if you when you one of my favorite things is to have a realization of something and then to start
Mm.
reeling it back and then to watch how other situations have unfolded like this one.
Mm.
And what seems coincidental is
Yes.
in fact, the universe being on purpose.
Yes.
This is on purpose. It's not an accident. It's what's happening. And,
It's
and,
yeah.
and
It's synchronicity. And do you think this is part of a manifestation too? Manifestation too?
are you saying do I think that I bring this on myself?
Yes, part of it.
I think part of that's true.
Hmm.
But there also has to be another willing participant.
Yes, you can tango without two people. So
Right? It takes both of you.
yes, and I also said this one time. I think um, this reality, right? Like you and I are talking right now, it won't happen if either one of us does not agree to come together right here, right now, right? So
Exactly. Like I said, we're both willing participants in
yes,
in that which is happening right now. Yeah.
yeah. And so last time we mentioned about you have a after death experience.
Oh,
Okay.
well, it was, yeah. I guess you call it a
Mm-hmm.
life after death experience.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the death experience,
Mm-hmm.
where you leave your body and you can observe yourself from a different perspective.